Welcome to Basic Electrical Engineering. In this lecture, we will discuss about the construction and types of three-phase induction motor. So let's start. The three-phase induction motor is the most widely used electrical motor all over the world. Almost 80% applications are provided by this motor because of its simple construction, low cost, good operating characteristics, high efficiency, absence of commutator that you have seen in DC motor, and also the good speed regulation. In three-phase induction motor, the power is transferred from stator to rotor windings through the induction. As we all know that the motor operates based on the Lorentz formula, which states that when a current carrying conductor is placed within a magnetic field, then a force is developed on the conductor. And because of this force, the torque will be produced. And due to this torque, the rotor of the machine will rotate. This is the basic operating principle for any type of motor, whether it is AC or DC. So here we have to develop the magnetic field. In this case, it is produced when we supply the three-phase power supply to the stator winding. Then the rotating magnetic field is produced there. And the current that will be flowing through the rotor conductors. For that, we need not to supply the power from the external source. The EMF will be induced in the rotor conductor, and so the current will be flow through the rotor conductor. That is because of the Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. That is by the rotating magnetic field which is produced in the stator. That we will discuss in details during the operating principle. The induction motor, that's why it is called as the induction motor, because here the current flowing through the rotor conductor is because of the Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. This motor is also called as asynchronous motor because the speed of the induction motor may be anything other than the synchronous speed. The synchronous speed is basically represented by Ns. It is equal to 120 F upon P, where F is the supply frequency and P is the number of pole. The magnetic field which is produced in the stator, which is rotating in nature, and this magnetic field is basically rotates with the speed of synchronous speed, Ns. Therefore, the rotor of the induction motor cannot be rotated at synchronous speed. There may be any value of the speed, but it cannot be equal to the synchronous speed. Induction motor is basically considered as a constant speed motor because the speed does not change rapidly from no load to full load condition. Therefore, the speed regulation is very good for this type of motor. However, the speed of the induction motor is frequency dependent. So, by changing the frequency, you can change the speed of the motor, but it is not an easy task. For that, we have to implement some electronic devices to control the speed of the motor by changing the frequency. Like any other electrical motor, a three-phase induction motor is also has two parts, that is the stator and the rotor. Here, the stator carry a three-phase winding where three-phase power supply is given from the external source, and the rotor carries a short circuit winding. It is also three-phase in nature. Here, as we have already mentioned, the power supply is given only in the stator winding. So when the power supply is given to the stator winding, the magnetic field will be produced. It will be rotating in nature and it will cut the rotor conductors. Then, according to the Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction, the EMF will be induced in the rotor conductors. So the current will start to flow through the rotor conductor, and hence, according to the Lorentz formula, the force will be developed and the torque will be produced. So here the voltage and the power in the rotor winding is basically developed because of the induction, and that is because of the power supplied in the stator winding. That is through the electromagnetic induction. That's why this type of motor is called as the induction motor. Now, if we consider the operating principle of the induction motor, it can be seen that the operating principle of the induction motor is same as that of the transformer. So, it can be considered as the transformer with a rotating secondary windings. So, the induction motor can be described as a transformer type AC machine in which the electrical energy is converted to the mechanical energy. If we recall the operating principle of the transformer, we have seen that the transformer operates based on the Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. Here also, in case of induction motor, the EMF induced in the rotor and hence the current flowing through the rotor conductors because of the induction. That's why the induction motor is also considered as a rotating transformer, or it can be considered as a transformer type AC machine in which the electrical energy is converted to the mechanical energy. Now see the construction of the three-phase induction motor. As like any other motor, the three-phase induction motor also has two main parts, that is the stator and the rotor. The rotor is separated from the stator by a very small air gap. The air gap is in between 0.4 mm to 4 mm depending upon the power of the motor. The other part of the three-phase induction motors are shown here. These are the shaft that is for transmitting the torque to the load. It is made up of the steel. Now in this figure here, the parts of the induction motors are shown, and this is the shaft of the induction motor. Next is the bearing. Bearing is basically for supporting the rotating shaft. So here the bearings are used in both sides of the shaft. One is at the beginning and another is at the end side. So these are the bearing of the rotor which is connected to the shaft. Next, the fan is also connected to the shaft. This is basically because of for the cooling purpose. As when the induction motor is at a running condition, different type of losses occurs in the motor. These losses basically convert to the heat energy. Therefore, to dissipate the heat energy, the fan is connected to the shaft, and this is for the cooling purpose of the machine. And the terminal box, that is for the external electrical connection. This is the terminal box where the three-phase AC power supply is given to the stator of the induction motor. Now, the other parts are also shown here, that is the fan cover and the uh, rings, then the lock nut. There are different type of parts of the machine that is shown in this figure. Now the stator of the three-phase induction motor. The stator of the three-phase induction motor has three parts, that is the stator frame, Next is the stator core and the stator winding or the field windings. As its name indicates, the stator is basically the stationary part of the induction motor, and it is used to cover the rotor and other part from the dust and moisture. The stator winding is basically placed in the stator of the induction motor, and three-phase supply is given to it. It consists of a steel frame which encloses a hollow cylindrical core made up of thin laminations of silicon steel, that is to reduce the hysteresis and eddy current loss. So the frame of the stator is made by the silicon steel, but it is not made by a solid material. It is basically thin laminated sheets are used there, and there are some slots in the inner periphery of the stator. The thin laminations are done because to reduce the eddy current losses, and the silicon steel is used to reduce the hysteresis loss. Now, in the slots of the stator, the three-phase stator winding, or we can say the field windings, are placed. So when the three-phase current is supplied to the stator winding, then the rotating magnetic field will be produced in the stator. A number of evenly spaced slots are provided on the inner periphery of the laminations that can be seen in this figure. This is the slot. Here we can see that within the slots, the stator windings are placed. The insulated conductors connected to form a balanced three-phase star or delta connected circuit. So the stator winding, that is the three-phase winding, it may be either a star connected or a delta connected three-phase circuit. The three-phase stator winding is wound for a definite number of poles as per the requirement of the speed. Now remember one thing, greater the number of poles, lesser will be the speed of the machine, and vice versa. That means here the speed of the motor is inversely proportional to the number of poles. If we increase the number of poles, the speed of the motor will be less. And when the three-phase power supply is given to the stator winding, a rotating magnetic field of constant magnitude is produced. That we'll discuss later in this lecture. This rotating magnetic field circulates over the rotor, and then according to the Faraday law of electromagnetic induction, the EMF is induced in the rotor conductors, and then the current will start to flow through the rotor conductors. Now the rotor of the three-phase induction motor. The rotor, which is the rotating part of the induction motor, and it is connected to the mechanical load through the shaft. The rotor, which is mounted on the shaft, is a hollow laminated core having slots on its outer periphery, and the windings is placed in these slots, which is called the rotor winding, or sometimes it can be called as the armature winding. The rotor of the three-phase induction motors are further classified as the squirrel cage rotor and the slip ring rotor. So here it is the squirrel cage rotor, and here it is the slip ring rotor. And depending upon the type of the rotor construction, the three-phase induction motor is also classified as squirrel cage induction motor and slip ring induction motor. Let's see the squirrel cage induction motor. Here in this figure, the construction of the squirrel cage induction motor is shown. The squirrel cage rotor consists of a laminated cylindrical core having parallel slots on its outer periphery. One copper or aluminum bar is placed in each of the slots. Then all these copper bars or the aluminum bars are joined at each end of the metal rings It is also called as the end rings. So if we see this figure, this is a hollow cylinder where number of slots are present here, and the copper or the aluminum bars are placed within these slots, and then the conductors are short circuited by using the end rings. So this is the structure of the this is the structure of the rotor, and after placing the conductors and short circuiting the rotor by using the end rings, the rotor will be look like this. So this is the structure of the squirrel cage induction motor with the conductors. This form a permanently short circuited winding which cannot be altered, as the rotor conductors are short circuited from both the sides. Therefore, the rotor conductors or the rotor windings cannot be changed. Also, we cannot add any external resistance to the rotor winding, which is required to produce the high starting torque. So it is not possible in case of squirrel cage induction motors. Now, the entire construction resembles a squirrel cage, and that's why this type of rotor is considered as the squirrel cage rotor, and corresponding machine is considered as the squirrel cage induction motor. Here, the rotor is not connected electrically to the supply, but current is induced in it by the Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction that we have already discussed and we will discuss in detail later. So, the induction motor which employed the squirrel cage rotor is called the squirrel cage induction motor. Normally, most of the three-phase induction motor used in industries are of squirrel cage type because it is a very simple in construction and it is the robust, so it enables to operate in most adverse circumstances. So all over the world, the induction motor which is preferred mostly is the squirrel cage induction motor. But there is a disadvantage of this type of motors, that is the starting torque of the squirrel cage induction motor is very low. As we have already discussed, the rotor windings are already short circuited, so we cannot add any extra resistance to the rotor windings. Later, during operating principle, we will see that the starting torque will be maximum when the rotor winding resistance is equal to rotor winding reactance. This is the condition for the maximum starting torque. Maximum starting torque. But in general, the value of rotor winding resistance is much smaller than the rotor winding reactance. Therefore, sometimes in other type of induction motor, externally some resistances are connected to the rotor circuit to get the maximum starting torque. And once the motor starts to operate, then these external resistance are disconnected from the circuit. But this cannot be possible in case of squirrel cage induction motor. That's why the starting torque of the squirrel cage induction motor is very low. As we have already discussed, as the rotor windings are already short circuited, it is not possible to add any external resistance to the rotor circuit. That's why we cannot get the high starting torque from this machine. This type of motors are used where the constant speed applications and also the low starting torque is required. For example, the lathe machine, the drilling machine, fan, blower, printing machines. In this type of applications, the squirrel cage induction motors are generally used. Next is the slip ring induction motor. It consists of a laminated cylindrical core and carry a three-phase winding similar to the stator winding. So in case of slip ring induction motor, here the rotor conductors are not in shape of the bar that we have used in squirrel cage induction motor, but here the rotor conductors are made by the windings, just like the stator. The rotor windings are uniformly distributed in the slots of the rotor, and it is generally star connected rotor conductors. So here in this figure we can see that the structure of the slip ring induction motor rotor. There are a number of slots, and in this slot the three-phase star connected rotor windings are placed, and these windings are connected to the slip ring, which is mounted on the shaft. Here the other side of the three-phase star connected system, that is the open end of the rotor winding, are joined to three insulated slip rings, which is mounted on the rotor shaft with the brass resting on each of the slip rings. And these three brushes are further connected to the three-phase star-connected rheostat. At starting, the external resistance can be connected to the rotor windings. Here in this figure, we can see that this is the three-phase star-connected rotor winding, which is connected to the uh, slip ring and through the brass, and then some external resistances are connected to these star-connected rotor windings. This arrangement is made to make the rotor winding resistance is equal to rotor winding resistance, so that we can get the maximum starting torque from the machine. Now, as the rotor runs up to its speed, when the rotor reaches the speed, gradually it increases the speed. These external resistances are gradually disconnected from the circuit. It is gradually reduced and finally it is disconnected. And the external resistance are used during the starting period only. When the motor attains the normal speed, the three brushes are short circuited so that the slip ring induction motor will run like a squirrel cage rotor. So once the external resistance are disconnected, then the three-phase rotor windings are short circuited, and then it will be working like a squirrel cage induction motor. The only purpose here to add the external resistance to get the high starting torque. As in this type of motor, we can get the high starting torque. Therefore, this type of motors are preferred in hoist, crane, elevator, electric train, etc. There, this type of motor can be used. Next is the rotating magnetic field. As we have already discussed, the basic operation of the induction motor based on the rotating magnetic field. When the three-phase power is supplied to the three-phase distributed stator winding, then a rotating magnetic field is produced which rotates at a constant speed. This is called as the synchronous speed. Consider the stator of an electrical motor where three-phase windings is physically distributed in the stator core in such a manner that the winding of each phase is separated from other by 120 degree in space. So here in this figure we can see that it is a three-phase stator windings where each phase is separated from each other by 120 degree. So this is the R phase, then Y phase, and then the B phase. So when the current is flowing to the stator winding, then the current in each phase will produce the magnetic field. So phi R is the magnetic field produced in the R phase, phi Y is the magnetic field in the Y phase, and similarly phi B is the magnetic field in the B phase. Although the vector sum of the three currents in a balanced system is zero at any instant, but the resultant of the magnetic field produced by the current is not zero. Rather, it will have a constant non-zero value which is rotating in space with respect to the time. The magnetic flux produced by the current in each phase can be represented as phi r is equal to phi max cos omega t. Uh, then phi y is the phi max cos omega t minus 120 degree, and similarly phi b is phi max cos omega t minus 240 degree. As we can see that when the three-phase power supply is given to the stator winding, the three-phase current will flow in the stator, and this three-phase current will be the phasor diagram of the three-phase current can be represented as IR, IY, and IB. For a balanced and symmetrical system, the magnitude of the each current will be same, as well as their phase difference is also equal. That means if we consider phi r as the reference, then phi y will lag the phi r. The current in the y phase will lag by 120 degree, and similarly current in the b phase will lag by 120 degree from the y phase. Now this current when flow through the windings, it will produce the magnetic field. Therefore, the magnetic field produced in the R phase is represented as phi m cos omega t. Similarly, the magnetic field produced in the Y phase is phi m cos omega t minus 120 degree. That means the Y phase magnetic field will be lagging the R phase magnetic field by 120 degree because corresponding current is also lagging by the same angle. Similarly, the magnetic field in the B phase will lag the R phase flux by 240 degree because the current in B phase is also lagging the R phase current by 240 degree. This is the similar representation of the current in a three-phase system as the flux is in phase with the corresponding phase current, where phi r, phi y, and phi b are the instantaneous flux of corresponding red, yellow, and blue phases, and phi m is the amplitude of the flux. So here in this figure, the waveform of the three fluxes are shown. This is the R phase flux, then Y phase, and the B phase. All these fluxes will be sinusoidal in nature, and there will be 120 degree phase difference. So phi r is equal to phi max cos omega t, phi y is equal to phi max cos omega t minus 120 degree, and phi b is equal to phi max cos omega t minus 240 degree. Therefore, if we want to draw the phasor diagram of these three fluxes, so this is the flux in the R phase, then flux in the Y phase lagging by 120 degree, and similarly flux in the B phase which is lagging by 240 degree from phi r. The resultant magnetic field at any instant will be the combination of these three magnetic fields, taking into account the direction as well as the magnitude. Now, to get the resultant flux, first of all, you have to resolve the three fluxes in horizontal and vertical components. That means here each and every flux will be converted into two parts. One will be in the horizontal line, another will be in the vertical line. Like phi y should have vertical component here, and it should have some horizontal component. Similarly, phi b should have some vertical component and some horizontal components. Therefore, if we join all the horizontal components and all the vertical components, we'll get the corresponding fluxes. So the horizontal flux can be represented as phi h, that is equal to phi r plus phi y cos 120 degree plus phi b cos 240 degree. Now put the value of phi r, phi y, and phi b in this relation. So it will be phi max cos omega t minus phi max cos omega t minus 120 degree, and the value of cos 120 degree, that is minus 1 by 2, is here. Similarly, the value of cos 240 degree, that is minus 1 by 2, and the phi b, which is phi max cos omega t minus 240 degree. If we simplify this, then finally we'll get the horizontal component of the resultant flux phi h, and it will be equal to 3 by 2 of phi max cos omega t. Now, similarly, the vertical component, that is phi r sine 0 degree plus phi y sine minus 120 degree plus phi b sine minus 240 degree. Again, put the value of phi r, phi y, and phi b, and after simplification, the vertical component will be 3 by 2 of phi max sine omega t. So this is the vertical component of the resultant flux. Now draw these horizontal and vertical fluxes in a phasor diagram. So here it will be the horizontal flux, that is phi h, and this is the vertical part, that is phi v. Therefore, the resultant will be the combination of these two fluxes. So here we will get the resultant flux. So this is the resultant flux which is produced by three-phase magnetic field. Here we can see that the resultant flux makes an angle with the horizontal line also. Let's say it is theta. So the resultant flux can be calculated by square root of horizontal component square plus vertical component square, and finally we'll get the value as 3 by 2 of phi max. So this is the magnitude of the resultant magnetic field which is produced by the three-phase balanced fluxes. Now, if we want to find the inclination of the resultant flux, then it will be theta. So if we write tan theta, then the value of tan theta will be equal to vertical component upon horizontal component. Therefore, theta can be written as tan inverse phi v upon phi h, where phi v is equal to 3 by 2 of phi max sin omega t, and similarly phi h is equal to 3 by 2 of phi max cos omega t. So if we put the values of phi v and phi h, finally we'll get the value of theta as omega t. That means the position of the resultant flux with respect to the reference line depends upon the time. Therefore, when time t is equal to 0, the value of theta will be equal to 0, and when the theta is equal to 0, the resultant flux will be along the x-axis. Now, with the increase of time, the value of theta will also be increasing. Therefore, the position of the resultant flux will also changes. So the position of the resultant flux will be changes periodically with a constant deflection, and this is considered as the rotating magnetic field. So here we can see that the resultant flux has a constant magnitude, that is 3 by 2 of phi max. It is a constant value, and its position is continuously changing with respect to the time. The resultant magnetic field, which rotates with a constant speed, is called the synchronous speed, and it is represented by ns, that is 120 f upon p, where f is the supply frequency of the supply, and p is the number of pole in stator. Therefore, for a particular machine with a constant supply, the value of ns will be constant. That means the resultant magnetic field is of constant magnitude, and it will rotate with a constant speed, which is considered as the synchronous speed. This is the base of the operation of a three-phase induction motor or other AC machine. So in next class, we will discuss about the operating principle of the three-phase induction motor. That's all. Thank you.